Good day to all of you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to this week's live tropical weather outlook. We are now at June 20th, 2026. So we are now 3 weeks into the hurricane season in the Atlantic. Not much to talk about today, at least tropics-wise in the Atlantic basin. But we are going to review a little bit of what's happened over the past week. If you remember, we have now officially gotten our first named storm of the hurricane season in the Atlantic and the northwestern Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, whatever you want to call it, with Tropical Storm Arthur, which made landfall in Texas and brought lots of heavy rain and historic flooding in multiple places, or near historic flooding in the very least, to portions of Louisiana and Mississippi, and in general, lots of impacts throughout the southeast coast. We're going to review that. We're going to review what has happened this hurricane season so far. And of course, we're going to take a look at what is to be expected at least over the next week, but we're also going to go a little bit beyond that as well. And of course, we are also going to talk about El Nino and Enso as well, as that is a major factor into hurricane season, especially for this year. So lots to go over today. Hope you all are having a great Saturday. Let's immediately get started. People are going to join in the chat, and I'll let everybody join as they come in, but let's just, get started immediately today. First off, by taking a look at the Wikipedia page for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season and the stats for the season so far, we now officially have some stats. First system formed June 17th, 2026, and again, that was Arthur, which was 45 miles per hour with a lowest central pressure of 999 millibars. And because Arthur is the only storm of the season right now, because the Wikipedia page here, and by the way, I do like looking at the Wikipedia page. I know some people kind of, go against using Wikipedia, because yes, virtually anyone can just create an account and edit it. Although Wikipedia does have some standards, they do try to keep these pages as clean and as accurate as possible. So I don't really trash on Wikipedia like some others do, and I like the format that they have. Strongest storm, again, Arthur is the strongest storm right now because it is the only storm that has formed so far this season, and right off the bat, one depression and one named storm down. Our current ACE is at 0.4, and I'll actually show you the ACE score on the CSU Tropical Meteorology Tracker in just a little bit. And you can scroll down here. The biggest reason why I love Wikipedia is because they have these very neat timelines of the season and how the season has progressed. And right now, the timeline only encompasses June and July, and of course, we have Arthur in there for mid-June. So nice to see that our first named storm of the season, Arthur, has already arrived this past week. Here's a look at the Colorado State University. This is another tracking tool that I like to use to take a look at the seasonal stats as the season progresses. And we are definitely going to revisit this website as the season progresses, not just for the Atlantic, but I think we could also pull up the stats as well for other basins too. But again, Arthur, first named storm of the season, dates active June 17th to June 18th, although it really kind of lasted less than 24 hours because, again, it was a very weak storm. And as you all probably know, especially if you tracked it, maximum sustained winds 40 knots, so 45 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 999 millibars, with accumulated cyclone energy of 0.4. So already, once again, getting the season off to a start here. And let's see how much the ACE compares to what we typically see in the season right now. So I guess the last point they have here is for June 19th. The observed ACE so far for this season on June 19th, which was yesterday, was 0.4. Typically in a season, we see 1.7. So already we are below normal in terms of the ACE score so far. We're probably going to catch up a little bit at some point, but, given that the hurricane season in the Atlantic is supposed to be below normal this year, it makes sense that we are already going to be below normal right now, and we probably will stay below normal for most, if not pretty much almost the entirety of this season. All right. So, is there any chances coming up in the next week here? Are we going to see any chances to add a little bit more ace and a little bit more points to the hurricane season in the Atlantic? Not over the next 7 days, at least according to the National Hurricane Center. Things are once again nice and quiet here in the Atlantic Basin. And the same goes as well for the Pacific, although the Pacific is probably going to see more activity in the near future, as I'll show you in a little bit. But things nice and quiet right now across both basins in the tropics, at least, in our neck of the woods. And I say our neck of the woods because we're going to travel to the Westpac here in just a little bit, where there is activity happening. So our area is nice and quiet right now, but there is tropical activity happening elsewhere. And the satellite here of the Atlantic right now pretty much confirms what I just said. Not much activity happening across the basin right now. Definitely interestingly aggressive tropical wave, which has come off the coast of Africa, though. Although it's kind of, petering off here as it splashes down onto water and probably absorbs a lot of the dry air and, not so favorable conditions of the ocean right now in the Atlantic. But interesting that we already have some pretty aggressive looking waves coming off the coast of Africa. And the African wave train in general has been pretty busy so far. We have a wave out here in the eastern Atlantic. Looks like there's another wave here in the western Caribbean, probably bringing some moisture to Central America and Mexico, and probably brought moisture to Jamaica. And also looks like some of those, clouds and showers are making their way northward towards Cuba too. Probably another wave here approaching the islands as well. So things are pretty active wave-wise in the Atlantic, but atmospherically, I'm pretty sure you could just tell by the look of this satellite, there's really not much of anything expected, or not much of anything that is piquing our interest in terms of development right now. Switching over to the Pacific, also really not much getting going just yet. You do have as well some tropical waves which are kind of, just roaming around, although nothing defined. The wind shear is generally somewhat higher across the basin right now. The Eastern Pacific, we did have a pretty active start a few weeks ago. The first week of the month, we had 3 named storms in the Pacific. All of them were weak, though, but still, we started off pretty strong. Looks like we're calming down now, but as I'll talk about in more depth and more detail in just a little bit, I think we are probably going to see that change, and we are probably really going to see the Eastern Pacific kick into high gear and probably prepare itself to enter its first peak of the season in just a few weeks. Let's travel around the world. And that sounds fun, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of people would like to travel around the world right now, although probably most of you don't have any money. I certainly don't have any money to do it, but anyways, whatever. But traveling around the world now, seeing, the tropical activity that's happening elsewhere. Not much happening in the Atlantic or the Eastern Pacific, but in the Western Pacific, we have a tropical storm there. Tropical storm Macala. I believe that's how you say it. Most of these Western Pacific tropical storm names are always very, iffy for me to be able to pronounce, so I'm more than likely butchering the name, but I don't think anybody really cares. But Tropical Storm Macala seems like it is just to the east of the Philippines by probably a few hundred miles. And as I'll show you with the track here in just a little bit, Macala might actually get pretty close to the Philippines, and it might be a pretty intense and strong typhoon in the making. In fact, looking at the satellite imagery of Macala right now, you could see already has that classic shrimp look to it, if you're not familiar what that means. Basically, whenever tropical cyclones kind of take on the shape of a shrimp, with the tail curling into a larger ball of convection here. Again, keep in mind the shape of a shrimp. Maybe I should actually search up the picture of a shrimp so you can kind of get the reference. But if you are an avid or especially a long-time tropical tracker, you probably know exactly what I mean. But whenever you especially see these tropical cyclones here with this curved band spiraling up into and connecting to a nice tight ball like you see right now, that is absolutely indicative of a intensifying tropical storm, probably approaching low-end hurricane, or in the Pacific case, typhoon status. And also saw just before we came on here some microwave imagery shots of Macala, and it looks like this might be trying to build a inner core as well. So we are absolutely seeing intensification occur here, and we might even see this soon try to rapidly intensify. And this is expected to strengthen over the next 2 or 3 days. And this is the track forecast from the European ensembles, and most of them make this a pretty strong storm, as you could see. A few of the weaker ensembles here a little bit further to the north kind of bring this only into the 980s, 970s. But interestingly enough here, the more southerly tracks from the European ensembles actually make this stronger. In fact, you even see some of them dipping into the 950s, even 940s. Well, that'll definitely be a concern for the Philippines. I guess maybe the situation will be, but the situation for this will be, if it's stronger, it goes further south. If it's weaker, it goes further north. I don't know. I'm just trying to make inferences based on the ensembles here, but definitely we'll get close to the Philippines, although most, if not all, of the ensembles keep this north of the Philippines, although I'd imagine that especially if this, ends up more on the western side here, might get some rain bands to hit northern portions of the Philippines here, so you still might see some impacts. Taiwan as well, generally outside of where most of the ensembles bring this, but especially if this is a little bit more to the south, we might deal with something here, that's further closer to Taiwan, so that might be interesting as well. But yeah, looking like this will become a strong typhoon here. And of course, let's take a look at the official forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which is, I believe, operated out of Hawaii. And they forecast as well a strong storm out of this too. 105 knots, which is roughly equivalent to a mid-range Category 3 hurricane. So, looks like the Pacific is going to experience yet another strong typhoon here. Will this make it to super typhoon intensity if this rapidly intensifies enough? We will see, but certainly the Western Pacific already beginning to wake up here in terms of tropical activity. And why is this happening? Well, the MJO is moving favorably into the Pacific. We talk about the MJO being one of the most important factors when it comes to tropical activity, especially on a subseasonal basis. And, we're using this now to kind of transition into a more broader topic about the Pacific in general, which is probably going to get more active here over the next several weeks. And I do believe that this typhoon here in the Western Pacific is probably just going to be the beginning of it, because, again, going back to the MJO, you could see, according to the GEFS, right now we're actually in the neutral phase, leaning towards phase 8 and 1. So interestingly enough that we were able to get some activity in the Pacific right now. But notice where the MJO goes over the next few weeks, especially as we get into early July, we move from phase 8 all the way into phase 5, and especially begin to amplify here into phase 6 and 7, which is the Western Pacific, and this happens by early July. And taking a look at the CFS forecast as well, let's see if the CFS 60 is loaded. So we got the latest model run there. Taking a look at the velocity potential anomalies, which basically correlates. The velocity potential is basically the MJO here. It's just giving you a visual of how the rising motion in the atmosphere looks like. And again, the greens represent lots of rising motion in the atmosphere. So we have lift, lots of moisture, lots of thunderstorms that are able to develop, which obviously will be the breeding ground for tropical activity. And you could see week 1, which is this upcoming week, so the last full week of June, I guess, rising motion already beginning to build here in the Pacific. Week 2 really kicks into high gear, especially in the Central Pacific here. That's probably going to help fuel lots of Western Pacific activity, as we'll have origin storms start in the Central Pacific and then probably make their way west into the Western Pacific, and we'll probably see some intense storms, maybe already even one or two long tracked, strong typhoons in the Pacific next month, and that'll really help get the ACE score up. But in general, across the entire Pacific here, getting into week 3 and even into week 4, and this rising cell here just expands even further, and it at this point pretty much encompasses the entirety of the Pacific, stretching all the way from the Western Pacific and the Philippines back east into the Eastern Pacific, and it just gets even more solid week 5 until week 6, and that takes us all the way out till the end of the month and probably to the very beginning of August. So things really developing here in the next few weeks in the Pacific, and not only will this help with really setting the stage for the Pacific to start kicking into full gear for the tropics, but obviously as well, you'd imagine that all this rising motion too will really help concentrate the atmosphere into a more El Nino favorable background state, which is only going to help strengthen our already pretty strong El Nino, and it's only going to get stronger from here on out. And you bet, especially with the look of this velocity potential forecast as we head out through the next few weeks here in the Pacific, El Nino is only going to get stronger. So everything in the Pacific is going to be amplified here over the next few weeks. So definitely the sign of lots of activity to come, and especially on the El Nino aspect, we'll get into that in just a little bit. But meanwhile, on the other hand, in the Atlantic, and you should also notice as well over the next few weeks, we do have, on the other hand, while we have rising motion in the Pacific, you also see that sinking air as well in the Atlantic, which kind of persists, although backs off a little bit, I guess, as we head towards the end of this month, or head towards the end of next month as we get towards August here on the weekly forecast. But for now, in the Atlantic here over the next 7 days, you can see absolutely nothing. And I'm just going back and forth here quickly because there really is nothing of interest to point out. You do see a little bit of vorticity here trying to consolidate in the MDR, especially as these very strong and aggressive tropical waves continue to emerge off the coast of Africa, and that's certainly an interesting thing to monitor as we're getting a lot of these strong tropical waves here in the Atlantic. You'd think that maybe one or two of them at some point would try to spark something, even if briefly, but looks like the atmosphere and the GFS is just not picking up on that right now. But you bet that these tropical waves are going to continue to progress westward and definitely try to find favorable conditions at some point, which will definitely happen here in the Eastern Pacific. And switching over to the Eastern Pacific now on the GFS over the next 7 days, looks like we start off quiet, but then, especially as we get towards days 5, 6, and 7, you notice here something trying to close off and some vorticity trying to consolidate, and that is definitely the look of a tropical system in the making here. And this happens once again towards the end of the month. And maybe we might have another one of these spin-ups as well here from the intertropical convergence zone that trying to consolidate and maybe become a weak storm. So maybe two areas to watch here in the Eastern Pacific over the next week, as the Pacific will definitely start to get active towards the end of the month. And I'll show you the Western Pacific in just a little bit here, but let's actually look at the ensembles now from the 0Z European. And you can see, once again as well, definitely something here springing up on the signal-wise on the ensembles too in the Eastern Pacific, and really comes to life by the time we get to 7 days out from now. So June 27th. So again, still within the 7-day time frame. And then it really lights up here, especially as we get towards the end of the model run into early July. So all of the signs here are lining up for late June, late next week into early portion of next month, the beginning of next month here we're really going to start looking forward to lots of activity coming, more than likely, in the Pacific. Not just the Eastern Pacific, though, but in the Western Pacific as well. Obviously, we have Macala here. That moves on off to the west-northwest, and then in the longer range begins to recurve northward and eventually northeastward. And judging by the ensembles here, we might have to watch once again for the remnants to potentially impact Japan here. So Macala, in terms of impacts to land, will definitely be a very important storm to track over the next week here. But then once again, looking long range in the Western Pacific too, especially coming out of the Central Pacific, like I mentioned before, lots of these origin storms coming from the Central Pacific and then really sprouting here in the Western Pacific. That is absolutely a strong signal that is standing out right now on the European ensembles. And just look at how many ensembles here really lighting up across the Western Pacific Basin. So looks like very soon here, things are really going to ramp up in the Pacific. And we are probably going to see the full force of the Pacific like we have not seen before in quite some time. And you bet that this is probably just the beginning, and it's going to get even more active here as the next few weeks and months go by, as El Nino continues to intensify. And perfect segue now into our El Nino segment for today, talking about El Nino in general. And of course, the biggest way we like to start off by doing that is by taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies right now. Globally, usually I only show the sea surface temperature anomalies focused on the Western Hemisphere, but I honestly think probably the best way to truly represent El Nino is by showing how things look like on a global scale, and you could just see how much El Nino really sticks out like a sore thumb right now. Widespread anomalies here, continuing to build aggressively along the equatorial Pacific, and this warmth pretty much is nearly basin-wide at this point. We still have some warmth, some cooler anomalies here in the Western Pacific along the equator, although that's actually typical with El Nino, where we see anomalies cooler in the Western Pacific, and then we see anomalies warmer in the Eastern Pacific. That is just the natural feedback response of El Nino, but man, do these anomalies stick out like a sore thumb, pretty much stretching all the way from the borderline of the Central Pacific straight down into the Eastern Pacific here. We are already seeing anomalies reach up to 2 degrees Celsius above normal, and then just the entire tropical Eastern Pacific and into the Central Pacific as well. These anomalies are just well above normal, with anomalies coming off the Baja Peninsula and southwest of the United States and off the Mexican coast, also reaching as much as 2 to 3 degrees Celsius as well. So you're really seeing how this El Nino is building, especially compared to the global scale. And I mean, this is just an amazing picture in showing how El Nino works with the sea surface temperature anomaly pattern here. This is probably the most classic looking picture you'll see with a developing El Nino, and certainly represents what is unfolding right now. And sea surface temperature anomaly wise, especially in the Nino 3.4, also nothing short of incredible. Right now, the latest daily value is at 1.6 degrees Celsius above normal. So we have pretty much already crossed strong El Nino threshold, which is at 1.5 degrees Celsius. And once again, I mean, that kind of makes sense given that if you look at the anomaly chart here, you could pretty much see that nearly all of the entire equatorial Pacific, stretching from South America west into the Central Pacific and pretty much right to the date line, has anomaly shadings reaching up to 2 degrees Celsius. So it makes sense that we are already seeing 1.6 right now. But I mean, it's still kind of astonishing given that it is only June 18th. And let's see if this is uploaded for June 19th. It's gone even higher for June 19th. The latest daily value for that up to 1.68. So pretty much getting towards 1.7 now. And again, this is just going to continue to go up and up and up over the next few weeks as El Nino strengthens. And let me scroll down here now to the latest weekly values. We are really beginning to catch up now with the weekly values, according to the Climate Prediction Center, the Nino 3.4 there as well, hovering close to 1 degree Celsius. So we are just about to strike moderate El Nino threshold with the weekly values as well. Already reached it in the Nino 3, and we are at Super Nino threshold with the 1 and 2 weekly values as well. And the 1 and 2 region is the region here just off the coast of South America. And you can see the values there are pretty much nearly off the charts here. We have 3s, some 4s, and even some 5s really beginning to show here off the coast of South America. So quite a warm event setting up. And again, these anomalies are just going to continue to propagate further and further towards the west before, more than likely almost the entirety of the equatorial Pacific here is going to be filled with anomalies 2 to 3, maybe even specks of 4 showing up in certain areas. So quite an incredible El Nino event building, and just a lot of warmth here really coming up and showing up now in the anomalies. And again, you bet that it's only going to get warmer from here on now. In fact, probably for next week's weekly update with the Nino 3.4, I would expect that we will probably reach 1 degree Celsius as well, making us officially hit moderate El Nino threshold with the weekly departures. Again, just continuing to level up with this El Nino here. The MDR, though, in the Atlantic, on the other hand, is kind of continuing to go back and forth now. We've seen the anomalies warm over the last several weeks here since late June. We saw a pretty decent warming period for a while, although over the last few days it's crashed down a little bit. A lot of this being influenced by the changes in the trade winds over just in general, trades are stronger. Saharan air, because of that, weighs down on the sea surface temperature readings, because a lot of these sea surface temperature graphs here, we get a lot of these readings from satellite data. You would think that it's probably because we have a lot of buoys out in the ocean and ship reports of sea surface temperatures out in the ocean, and that is true. I'm pretty sure that does contribute to it, but a lot of the sea surface temperature data, especially when you're, trying to talk about and trying to collect data for the entire world's worth of sea surface temperatures, as we see on this graph here, a lot of that data is derived from the satellite. And especially when we have stronger trades, meaning Saharan air being evicted from Africa into the eastern Atlantic, you would imagine that obviously has an impact on sea surface temperature data in the Atlantic here. So things are kind of being, weighed down a little bit right now in the eastern Atlantic, but I'd say the general trend is somewhat in a warming phase right now, but we're probably going to continue to go back and forth here in the Atlantic in terms of how warm our sea surface temperature anomalies will be. Although I do want to bring you back to this graph here, though. Interestingly enough, I do find it interesting that we are starting to see this tongue of warmth here begin to build in the subtropics of the Atlantic and kind of off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula here, just north of the Canary Current. That is definitely an interesting look here. And if you know already why this is interesting, you would know it's because typically when you especially start seeing warmth build here in the Atlantic near the Canary Current, that warmth tends to kind of shift southward over time, and probably maybe we will start to see things really warm up here in the MDR as we head throughout the next few weeks in the Atlantic. And so that will definitely be an interesting thing for the Atlantic hurricane season. Maybe, might shake up the sea surface temperature pattern a little bit. Maybe that'll kind of help influence the Atlantic to produce a little bit extra this season in the face of, what is going to be a Goliath El Nino building here. So it is a little bit of an interesting pattern that you are seeing building here in the Atlantic right now, and especially these anomalies here also becoming really warm off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula, 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Again, we will see over the next few weeks if this warmth continues to build and eventually shift southward. But boy, are these anomalies, especially in the Mediterranean Sea, very warm. 3, 4, even 5 degrees Celsius. Looks like Europe might be dealing with a heat wave right now, which is why we're seeing all these very, very warm anomalies show up, and including the far northeastern Atlantic here as well. So that is quite interesting to see, too. Here are the zonal wind anomalies in the Pacific over the next few weeks, and definitely makes sense as to why we've seen our recent batch of warming here in the Pacific, and our anomalies have skyrocketed to strong El Nino threshold already. We had quite the batch of strong westerly wind anomalies here in the Pacific, and so that's definitely helped, spike up the sea surface temperature anomalies. And it looks like for the next week or two here, we're going to see westerly winds persist, although maybe they'll die down a little bit. So maybe we'll see this graph, level off more than continue to just spike up like crazy like we're seeing right now. But still, obviously, you could say that the damage is already done. I mean, we're already at 1.7 degrees Celsius on the daily values in late June. We are already approaching strong El Nino threshold with our current sea surface temperature anomaly values that are being recorded. So, I mean, again, the damage is already done, and things are only going to continue to get warmer from here on out. But I guess maybe over the next few weeks here, a week or two, as we close out the month, maybe we'll see these westerly winds die down for a little bit, and we will see warming stall for a little bit, but still very, very warm Pacific and a very strong El Nino building for sure. The SOI, taking a look at that right now, continues to remain negative. The latest 90-day average from the SOI is -12, so the average here from the SOI really beginning to catch up to the strength of this El Nino that's building. -18 on the 30-day average, kind of up a little bit from -21, -22 from just a few days ago. And you could see with the daily contribution values, I guess for the last day or two here, we've kind of seen the SOI rise a little bit to positive territory, something that we have not seen for a long time before that, especially for the last few weeks here. We've been seeing these very, very negative SOI values, which really helps tank the average here, both the 30-day and the 90-day average. But I'm pretty sure over the next few weeks here, as we'll especially see the MJO move into the Pacific again in early July, these SOI values are probably going to drop like a rock once again, and El Nino will continue to strengthen. In fact, El Nino is probably already going to continue strengthening here over the next 2 weeks, but we're probably going to see the SOI drop again here, but still negative and still strongly negative. So still means we are definitely seeing El Nino continue to build here right now. And finally, to close off, let's look at the European ensemble forecast for the zonal wind anomalies here. Taking a look at it on a global scale to show you how the Pacific looks like here over the next few weeks, and just taking this out till the end of the forecast, which is the next 2 weeks, so early June. And you can see these westerly winds here continue to persist in the Pacific, more focused towards the Central Pacific right now, which I actually do find a little bit interesting. We do kind of see some of these easterlies here in the Eastern Pacific, and the westerlies more focused towards the west. So we're probably especially going to see quite the activity in the Western Pacific here over the next few weeks. So we're probably going to see multiple chances for strong typhoon activity, obviously already starting with Tropical Storm Makala here, which is obviously going to strengthen, but westerly still persisting, and this will definitely help intensify El Nino further. And then, really quickly, before we really close off here, let's take a look at how the zonal wind anomalies look like in the Atlantic and see whether or not we will continue to see things warm here. And we kind of go back and forth. We have, some westerlies here, especially in the subtropics right now. So definitely there's some mechanism as to why we are seeing the subtropics here, especially off the Iberian Peninsula and the Eastern Atlantic here, warm up. You definitely see that there are some westerlies there right now, and looks like those persist for a few days or so. until we get to about 10 or so days out. Those westerlies shift north, and then we kind of go back to more easterlies here, so stronger trades. So again, back and forth with the sea surface temperatures here in the Atlantic, and that's kind of going to be the case for most of the year this year, but probably at least over the next few days, we should continue to see more warming. And of course, we will watch and see just exactly how this transpires for the hurricane season this year. As I've said before, especially if the Atlantic is able to warm up and build some warmth, build some sort of resistance to the El Nino, maybe we will see a little bit more in the way of activity that tries this year, and we'll probably get a few extra named storms and ace points compared to what a lot of forecasts are showing. But of course, that is something that we will have to see progress over the next few weeks and see whether or not the Atlantic is actually able to warm up. But either way, obviously we are still expecting a below normal season. But in the meanwhile, we are definitely expecting the Pacific to get very active here. And of course, all of that is stemming from our El Nino, which continues to build and continues to grow stronger with every passing day. All right, so we've gotten the main part of the discussion out of the way. Let's see if any of you are in the chat here posting any comments, and I'll take the next few minutes to answer any questions or comments that any of you might have right now. And if you have any questions about the hurricane season or any questions about what may happen here over the next few weeks, I'll definitely be free to answer your questions here. All right. Someone asked, does an active typhoon season cause westerly wind bursts? Yes, they do, because the general mechanism of typhoons generally cause westerlies along the equator, and of course those westerlies will fuel more activity here in the Pacific, and of course as well fuel El Nino. So yes, El Ninos or typhoons do cause westerly wind bursts, especially if those typhoons are strong, like what we might be seeing here in the Pacific very soon. Let's see if there are any other questions or comments here. How does a tropical storm form in the Atlantic basin, a hurricane in the Atlantic area? That tropical wave has favorable conditions with a 20% chance of cyclonic development in the basin. I don't know what 20% you're talking about, because when I checked the National Hurricane Center, there was nothing. So I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't seem like there's anything really popping up right now in the least. Danilo, does CSU have ace points chart? Yes, they do, and I actually just showed it at the beginning here. This is their ace points or their general seasonal statistics tracker by Colorado State. I'll post this later on in the chat if you want access to it, but if you want to search it up right now, just search up CSU tropical meteorology Atlantic statistics real time or something like that, and this website here should probably show up. But yes, CSU does have real-time statistics, and we are definitely going to be reviewing this chart here throughout the season. So you're talking about the Euro model. If they bring cyclone, this adoption of the European model observes the movement of these tropical waves to see if they bring cyclonic development to the tropical Atlantic area, according to the models, the ensembles we are studying. So are you saying that the European model is predicting potential development here soon in the Atlantic? Because, again, I don't see it. How many ace points did Arthur have? 0.4. Very little, given that it was a very weak tropical storm and only lasted for, I believe, 18 hours or so, but still brought some ace. So we still have, again, some points that have been scored for the Atlantic for this hurricane season so far. So the season was able to actually start. And there's another interesting comment here. This year is proof, regardless of El Nino, it can still be bad. Arthur caused issues in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, and we are not even at peak season. Yes, that is absolutely true. Arthur was a weak storm. Obviously, it was a very sloppy, sheared storm, but its remnants still caused lots of heavy rain, especially over Louisiana. I believe there were areas that reached up to 2 feet of rain. And I don't believe any of the forecasts called for 2 feet of rain at all. I mean, most people were saying we would maybe get a foot of rain, and still that was enough to cause flash flooding issues. And we were still anticipating flash flooding issues from that, but some areas here in Louisiana and Mississippi got as much as 2 feet of rain. We saw overtopping and near record heights at some of these rivers here in at some of the rivers in Mississippi. So yeah, Arthur caused problems, even though it was a weak storm, and actually happens more than you think in the early season. So definitely, absolutely proof. I agree that definitely cannot count out these weak systems, because they can bring surprises, especially with flooding. Because as I like to say, and I really like to drive this point home all the time, flooding is the #1 killer when it comes to tropical cyclones. So definitely a lesson for many to reflect on and take forward as the season progresses. Tropical Tidbits only does 5-day averages for the zonal wind anomalies, not 24 averages. So not 24-hour averages. So I can't do that. 0.4 sounds like 0 named storms in my opinion. Well, we still got a name at the end of the day, so still already have a point down for the Atlantic, and it is what it is. Sometimes these named storms don't last for a long time, and I definitely remember that if you are especially in tropical Twitter, a lot of people were debating about whether or not Arthur even deserved to be a named storm. I do believe it did, though, because besides the heavy rainfall, there were some quite gusty winds recorded along the Texas coastline. I believe Galveston recorded 66 miles per hour. I believe that was recorded at Galveston Airport. So definitely some hefty winds with Arthur. So I do believe it was a name. Just because it is not a photogenic, beautiful storm with a stadium effect eye, it does not mean that it can't pack a punch, and definitely was proven, obviously, with the rainfall, but also some of the winds too that were recorded along the Texas coastline. So I do believe Arthur rightfully deserved to be named. I remember 10 hurricanes that have passed through Puerto Rico. Hurricane Katrina, which was a Category 5 of some. Hurricane Katrina happened in the Gulf. Hurricane Katrina hit Mississippi and Louisiana. I'm not really sure what you mean by Hurricane Katrina hitting Puerto Rico. So, again, we'll see what happens with this hurricane season. Can the NHC restart the hurricane season? I'm not sure if they have the power to do that. Some people believe that they do, but I'm not sure they have the power to do that. All right, so if there are not any more serious questions, I believe we will probably end it off here very, very soon. So, again, we will be watching the Atlantic over the next 2 weeks to see if anything sprouts up. But for now, looks like most of the activity is going to be in the Pacific. With that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's discussion. Great to have you all along. Hope you guys are enjoying your weekend, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy your weekend. I hope all of you stay safe. A lot happening in the world right now, so I hope all of you stay safe, stay calm. But I mean, we do have some enjoyment out there right now, obviously, especially if you're watching the World Cup. I guess there's a little bit of family enjoyment and entertainment there. So that can maybe be a mechanism to take your mind off of anything wild or stressful that might be happening right now, And enjoy the rest of your weekend. and I'll talk to you guys again very soon.